Welkom by Agri Monitor. Ek is Jacques de Tooy en hier praat ons landbou. In this week's Agri Monitor, today we explore the future of Namibia's livestock sector with Professor Johann Kirsten. He is the Director of the Bureau for Economic Research at the Stellenbosch Universit. Come with us and discover how empowering farmers, improving policy and strengthening collaboration can transform rural agriculture. Learn about market-oriented farming, access to finance and practical lessons from South Africa that can apply to Namibia. And then stay with us as we unpack strategies for sustainable growth, higher productivity and an inclusive livestock industry. Enjoy the show.
So let me kick off, this is sort of my outline that I'm going to follow. And again, as I said, I want to stick to the basics, the principles, and trying to use my age. You know, as you age, you get cynical and you get more skeptical about things, and as you get involved in lots of plan writings and documents and strategies, you realize that things are not going to deliver as the President said. So I'm going to sort of reflect on what I typically view as my departure points when we discuss these comprehensive issues. I also would just want to remind people again about what we're talking about in terms of transformation and inclusive growth, because we use these words, but we are often not clear on what we really mean. And then I want to reflect a bit on, in this journey of transformation, what would be the role of government, and what would be the role of farmers, and the role of farmers' unions. And then I'm going to conclude in talking about the key principles, key considerations, using some examples from South Africa, and going back into history to also reflect on how in Namibia and in South Africa early farmer settlements happened and how government played a specific role in that. So that's sort of the plan for today, trying to sort of link up to some of the earlier remarks and also then confirm some of the basic principles of dealing with transformation and inclusive growth. Okay, so first of all, as I said, when we, as the President said, harvest the future, you should not forget to look back in the mirror and see what happened and what happened before, and trying to understand where you made mistakes, where you've gained knowledge, where you've gained experience, and use that as a way to really guide you into the future. Because in academia we always say that nothing is new anymore. If you've developed it and you think it's new, it's either wrong or it's already been done. So there has been a stock of knowledge in our society that we can draw upon. Another departure point I always like to do is to reflect on I don't know whether you guys remember the KISS party. And so when we had our first democratic elections, there was KISS, that was nice KISS lip as the slogan for the party. But they didn't get many votes, but it's a very interesting slogan that they had: keep it straight and simple. another important lesson. So we've been making a lot of plans. In Namibia, I've listed now this morning NDP 1, NDP 5, NDP 6. South Africa has a national development plan. We have a master plan for this and a plan for that. You have now the STAS as a new plan, a new strategy. But if you go into the detail of most of those plans, you realize you get to the same points and the same things being done over again. So I often argue that we think we do something if we plan, if we strategize, if we do workshops, and we think that we have accomplished something at the end of the day. So I was very inspired by the President this morning. It's as if she read my notes, that we can do a conference, we can do a workshop, and we go away, but we're not doing anything. So that's another key slogan that I want to emphasize. You all know the Nike slogan, just do it. You know exactly what is to be done. Just do it. We don't need to reinvent plans and actions. South Africa is in this frustrating position where our economic growth is constrained by simple things: criminality, lack of roads, lack of government at the local level, problems at the harbours, rails, etc. So we all know the problems. So if you need to do research to show what should be done, it's actually embarrassing to put it on paper, because it's actually there. It's simple. We should just do it. And then my other bee and my bonnet that I always worry about is the use of terminology, because when we use this terminology, we typically confuse issues and we get into different camps and so on. And this is the whole issue of small scale, large scale, communal, freehold, emerging. I was, many years ago, I was at the Great South Africa Conference in Botawil, and the terminology of emerging farmer was thrown around, and one farmer stood up and said, I'm just tired of being called the emerging farmer. I'm already producing 2,000 tons of maize, and people still call me emerging farmer. When am I going to emerge? Do you have a criteria for when you're not an emerging farmer anymore? So I'm saying these things because it's uncomfortable, but it's the truth, and that's why you should read my book, The Uncomfortable Truth. Many of the things I'm saying there is in that book. So I think we just need to get away from this, because a farmer is a farmer. The scale of the operation just differs. The tenure on which they operate just differs. But the reality is the intention of everybody is to be a commercial intent. You can have a subsistence farmer, yes, because that farmer produces only for household consumption, but then you have the rest in different scales of commercial. There's one that sells 2 cows, and then there are one that are selling 200 weaners to the feedlot. So there are different scales of commercial. Once you are buying input and you're selling something into the market, I classify you as a commercial farmer. And then the other reality that we also have is the definition of family farms. There's this whole family farm movement in the global agriculture and even in South Africa. But when you realize is that 90% of all farmers are family farms. They are not corporates. There's no corporate farming or government farms, etc. It's all family farms. So I just had to get that off my chest, because I think sometimes when you talk about strategies, transformation, you get bogged down in terminology and then you lose out on the main issues. Another starting point for us to think about, it links up very nicely with the President's argument as well, and this is coming from the literature, showing that thinking about agriculture as an important driver for economic growth and economic transformation is very important, because the evidence over years suggests that growth in agriculture is generally 2 to 3 times more effective of reducing poverty than an equivalent amount of growth generated outside of agriculture. So Namibia is now tempted by the big oil find in the ocean. Will that reduce poverty, or will it just lead to the revenue going to certain wealthy individuals. The advantage of agriculture in reducing poverty is largest for the poorest individuals in society. So again, another important reason why agriculture should be the focus. The important source of the poverty reducing benefits of the agriculture growth in the widespread adoption of innovation that increase producer returns, first of all, and secondly, it also employs people, so you have wage labor, and it creates opportunities to reduce consumer prices. Because the more you produce, the supply increases and your market benefits through lower prices. And then very importantly, part of the focus of agriculture is then to rise agricultural productivity, which then also contribute to the reduction of poverty by releasing labor to other sectors in society that would improve the diversification of the economy. So this is sort of something that one can typically use when people ask you the question why the President said agriculture should be the #1 priority. These are the literature dimensions that illustrate to you why agriculture is so important. Okay, so let's go into the topic of the day, transformation of the agriculture and inclusive growth. So again, let us just be clear on what we mean. I think it might be in the strategy that you've just released, but let's be simple and be clear on what this means. If we say transformation of the agricultural sector, we basically are talking about moving agriculture from traditional, low productivity, subsistence-based farming to a more modern, high productivity, market-oriented and sustainable system. So the question then is, what do you need to do as an industry and the state to get people out of this low poverty trap in subsistence farming? What are the things that are holding them back to become commercial? Is it the tenure system? Is it distance to markets? Is it climate? Is it finance? Is it innovation? So you need to be specific about what are the constraining factors of the move out of that low productivity subsistence farming situation. And remembering that agriculture as a commercial sector, as an economic sector, cannot become your program for welfare or for social development. That's not agriculture's main focus. It is an economic sector. As we've shown, it's important for poverty reduction. It's important for employment. It's important for exchange, foreign exchange generation. So in this process of moving from this low productivity sector, you have to increase productivity. How do you increase productivity? You need to focus on technology and innovation. So you need to invest in research. You need to invest in extension. That brings in new processes, new seeds, new breeds, improvement in production practices that increases productivity. When you increase productivity, you have a surplus, and the surplus can go to the market. But now the question is, where is the market? Is the market too far? Is the market paying enough? So you might have market orientation, but there could be several constraints in getting to market. And it's sometimes related to the quality of the produce, or it could be related to the infrastructure that moves your product to the market. Obviously, value addition and agribusiness will play an important role, because consolidating output from farmers, bringing together, aggregate it, process it, and move it to market is a key part of the marketing process. So you cannot only have just the primary production, but the link into the value chain becomes critical for your move into the market. I've already talked about technology and innovation. If you don't invest in technology and innovation, and you invest in new seeds, but also don't be fixated on the seeds to be locally produced. The technology is so universal these days, and there's technology that you can apply to the local realities that can be of benefit to the country itself. So sometimes it might be unnecessary to invest in your own research, but you can adapt research to specific requirements and realities of of your country and your region. Then access to finance. This is an important dimension if you want to move agriculture forward. And access to finance is just not the universal principle like access to a commercial bank, etc. It's access to affordable and patient capital. Most of commercial agriculture in South Africa was built on cheap capital, cheap finance through the Land Bank and the Agriculture Credit Board, and I think in similar ways much of Namibia experienced the same benefits. But now when we want to transform the sector and commercialize those that were left behind or were disadvantaged through past policies, we have interest rates far above commercial banks in the commercialization process. You cannot start a farm at prime or prime plus 2. That's not going to happen, nowhere in the world. So the question is, what do we do as the state to have access to affordable finance to ensure that there's a decision and ability to start a farming business? The President talked about expensive inputs, but the most expensive input and the most critical input in agriculture is finance, production finance specifically. What are we doing to ensure that access to finance is affordable? The old days, it used to be prime -4, and you had long lead times to repay. So, Agri Bank of Namibia, what is their interest rates? Is it below FNB? Is it below Standard Bank? Has everybody got access to it? Because that is the critical dimension if we want to invest in better technology, expand the business, and make sure that the farming unit is a viable, commercially viable unit. You cannot be viable if you have a size of land that does not produce you with a sensible economic return. Obviously, transformation requires collaboration between government, the farmers' union, the private sector, and that's why this meeting is probably a very important one to want to ensure a meeting of minds, etc. But eventually, if you want to ensure this process to happen, the investment in public goods are the critical thing. So that is where the role of government becomes almost clear, because you need to invest in those things that the market would not provide. And the market is not going to provide enough research, the market is not going to provide cheap finance, the market is not going to provide a proper road, the market is not going to provide the veterinary service that you require to get into the export market. So there's a critical role of the state defined by the concept of public goods. Where is the investment of the state to ensure that this is happening? So this brings me then to specifically unpacking the role of government in this whole transformation process. Again, I, through my Namibian spies, know that there's a agriculture policy 2015. Do you all remember that document? No. So if you go to, I don't know, section 7 or whatever, I've taken that from the document. We are saying the same thing every time. The role of the government in this whole process is to create an enabling environment, not to intervene in the market, not to provide the market, to provide an enabling environment. And you can talk about the enabling environment as, again, the public goods dimension I've mentioned before, the elements of the research, affordable finance, infrastructure, etc., etc. And policies that are certain and consistent. If policies changes every day, then you're not going to have an enabling environment. The state should encourage private sector investment. When will the private sector invest? When they know there's certainty, that there's returns, and there's an enabling environment. To take a much more proactive approach to engaging with the private sector. So I'm glad that the presidents of the unions tackling the minister and say, well, we want to meet with you. You need to be engaging with us. We're the ones that drive agriculture. So we need to be engaged with you and you need to help us. We should not involve ourselves as state in the input and output markets. Now, I hear the notion of getting cheap inputs and so on, but it becomes problematic. You distort the market, you lead to inefficiencies. We must promote effective competition in the marketplace, break the monopolies, etc. And then, very important, in a drought-stricken country, you need to deal with risks. What are the programs in place by the state to deal with the risks that livestock farmers are going to face every 2 to 3 years in Namibia? So it can be through technology, it can be through a risk insurance program, it can through certain specific transfers, but I don't need to repeat anything that Namibians don't already know because it's already there in the agriculture policy of 2015 that states exactly what the role of the state in this broader strategy of transformation would be.
Excellence. What does it mean? Is it a sign of reliability, a mark of outstanding quality? Is it a measure of your hard-earned success? Is it a feeling, the knowing that you've earned your achievements and that you've paid your dues? Is excellence something that can ever really be achieved? It almost seems like you can never attain true excellence, but that's exactly why we work towards it. Because excellence isn't something that can be given to you. It's something that must be earned, day by day, month by month, year by year. Excellence is a lifelong pursuit. Every milestone we reach is an opportunity for expansion, improvement, and innovation. A challenge for us to become better than we could have ever dreamed of. Our goal isn't to compete against others, but to consistently better ourselves, to impact entire economic sectors and global supply chains, and provide you with new avenues through which you can thrive. It's about building a level of success that is shared by all. At Agri, excellence is our obsession. An obsession to outwork and outperform not our competitors, but ourselves. This obsession with excellence exists in everything we do, from engaging with our clients to providing value and building relationships. It's how we aim to build a nation's dreams, not only for tomorrow, but for years to come. We see every adversity as an opportunity for growth. Adapting to change is the only way to reach our true potential. We'll never give up. If there's no way, we'll make one, just as we have so many times before. Agri is agriculture, so average will never satisfy us. We will always aim to exceed the expectations of our clients, our shareholders, and our people every step of the way. As Namibian agriculture continues to evolve, Agri remains the household name for products, services, and advice. As with high performance and high achievement, excellence is something you have to become through passion, commitment, and consistency. It's never easy, but who said it should be? Perseverance brought us here, and our strive for excellence will take us into the future.
And that's a wrap of this week's Agri Monitor segment on transforming Namibia's livestock economy. Professor Johann Kirsten highlighted the critical role of farmers, policy and collaboration in creating sustainable growth. We've explored how finance, access market platforms and innovation can boost productivity and incomes. Thank you for joining us as we examine real solutions for a thriving, inclusive agricultural sector. Stay tuned and I'll see you next week.